There is a word that has become so loaded with cultural meaning over the last 2 decades that it has almost completely lost its connection to the reality it is supposed to describe. That word is independent. As applied to women in modern culture, independent has stopped meaning simply that a woman can take care of herself financially and practically. It has become an identity, a moral category, a signal of worth and self-respect that women are expected to perform continuously and loudly in their relationships, in their households, in the way they talk about men, in the way they refuse to need anything from anyone. And the performance of that identity, the relentless, exhausting, culturally mandated performance of not needing, is quietly producing one of the most widespread and least acknowledged sources of female misery in modern life. And it is doing serious damage to the homes and the families sitting in its path. My name is Miss Anna, and today we are talking about why so many modern women who have built the life they were told to build, the career, the financial independence, the self-sufficiency, the identity that does not require a man to be complete, are secretly, and sometimes not so secretly, profoundly unhappy. And why that unhappiness, rather than staying contained to the individual woman experiencing it, tends to radiate outward and corrode everything around it. Let's start with an honest examination of what the independence ideology actually tells women, because understanding the framework is essential to understanding why it produces the outcomes it does. The core message, stripped of its more sophisticated packaging, goes something like this. You do not need a man. You do not need a relationship to be whole. Needing anything from a partner is weakness. Depending on anyone is a vulnerability that will eventually be used against you. The goal is to arrive at a place where you are so fully self-sufficient that a relationship becomes entirely optional rather than meaningful, where a man is a luxury rather than a partner, where love is something you access from a position of total independence, rather than something you build through genuine mutual need and genuine mutual investment. That framework sounds empowering in the abstract, and in certain specific contexts, it is genuinely useful. A woman who can support herself financially is in a fundamentally stronger position than one who cannot. A woman who has her own identity outside of a relationship is healthier than one whose entire sense of self is built around a partner. Those are real and important truths. But the independence ideology does not stop there. It does not say build yourself up so you can choose partnership freely rather than from desperation. It says need is weakness. Dependence is danger. And the logical endpoint of that message, followed consistently and sincerely, is a woman who has systematically dismantled her own capacity for the kind of vulnerability that genuine intimacy requires. Because here is what the independence ideology does not tell you. Human beings are not built for the level of self-sufficiency it demands. We are social animals. We are wired for attachment, the need for genuine connection, for interdependence, for the specific kind of safety that comes from being truly known and truly accepted by another person, is not a cultural construction that can be reasoned or disciplined away. It is biology, it is architecture, it is as fundamental to human functioning as the need for food and sleep. And a woman who has spent years training herself to suppress and deny those needs does not become stronger for having done so. She becomes disconnected from her own interior life, from the people around her, and from any honest relationship with what she actually wants versus what she has been told she should want. The misery that results from this disconnection is not usually dramatic. It does not announce itself. It tends to present in quieter, more insidious ways. There is the woman who has everything the culture told her to build: the career, the apartment, the financial independence, the full social calendar, and who lies awake at night with a persistent, hollow feeling she cannot name and is too embarrassed to admit to anyone because she has spent years telling everyone, including herself, that she does not need more than this. There is the woman who is in a relationship but holds her partner at a consistent emotional distance because genuine closeness feels like a threat to the independent identity she has worked so hard to construct. There is the woman who interprets her partner's desire for genuine interdependence as an attempt to control her and pushes back against it until he stops trying, and then resents him for having stopped. There is the woman who cannot receive care gracefully because receiving care requires acknowledging need, and acknowledging need violates the foundational premise of who she has decided to be. All of these women are suffering, not loudly, not in ways that are easy to trace back to their source, but consistently and genuinely. And the independence ideology that was supposed to be the foundation of their strength is the thing producing the suffering, because it sold them a version of freedom that is actually a very sophisticated form of isolation. Now let's talk about what this does to the home, because the private misery of an individual woman, however real and however worthy of attention, is not the only thing at stake here. When a woman who is operating from the independence ideology is in a household with a partner and potentially with children, the effects of that orientation do not stay contained to her inner life. They radiate. They shape the entire emotional environment that everyone in that household has to live inside. The first way this plays out is through the dynamic it creates with her partner. A woman who has deeply internalized the message that needing is weakness tends to relate to her partner not as someone she genuinely depends on and genuinely values, but as someone she is managing, someone whose presence in her life is permitted rather than desired, someone who needs to earn his place continuously and whose contributions are evaluated rather than appreciated. She does not lean into him. She does not allow him to provide for her in the ways that men are oriented toward providing. She deflects his attempts at care because accepting them feels like conceding something, and the man on the receiving end of that dynamic does not feel like a partner. He feels like a contractor whose work is never quite good enough, and whose contract is always implicitly up for renewal. And men who feel that way do not invest more deeply. They protect themselves. They pull back. They become the emotionally unavailable partners she will later cite as the reason the relationship failed. The second way this plays out is through the atmosphere it creates in the household more broadly. A woman who is secretly miserable and who lacks the self-awareness or the cultural permission to honestly examine why is a woman who is carrying a significant amount of unprocessed emotional weight. And that weight has to go somewhere. It goes into irritability, into chronic dissatisfaction with the way the household is run, into criticism that feels to everyone on the receiving end as though it is never actually about the specific thing being criticized, but about something larger and more persistent that nobody can quite identify, into a baseline tension that permeates the home environment and that children, who are exquisitely sensitive to the emotional states of their primary caregivers, absorb and internalize without having any framework for understanding what they are absorbing. The research on this is not ambiguous. Children raised in households where the emotional atmosphere is characterized by chronic tension, maternal dissatisfaction, and the absence of genuine warmth between their parents are significantly more likely to develop anxiety, to struggle with attachment in their own adult relationships, and to carry a model of intimate partnership that is built around conflict and distance rather than safety and connection. The independence ideology does not just affect the woman living it. It shapes the next generation's understanding of what love looks like. And what they are learning in too many modern households is that love looks like management, like performance, like two people coexisting in the same space without genuinely needing each other. And they are going to carry that model into their own relationships and reproduce it, because that is what models do. The third way this plays out is through the erosion of the complementary dynamic that makes a household function as more than a logistical arrangement. Healthy partnerships are not built on perfect equality in the sense of identical contributions perfectly balanced at all times. They are built on complementarity, on two people who bring different things, who have different strengths, who occupy different roles, not because one is superior to the other, but because differentiation is what produces genuine interdependence and genuine value exchange. A woman who has committed to the independence ideology resists this complementarity because it requires her to acknowledge that she needs something her partner provides that she cannot provide herself. And that acknowledgement feels, inside the framework she has adopted, like a loss, like a concession, like evidence of inadequacy. So she fights it. She insists on doing everything herself, or on doing everything equally, or on framing any division of roles as a political statement rather than a practical expression of how two specific people can best build a life together. And the household suffers for it. not because equality is wrong, but because the rigid performance of independence at the expense of genuine interdependence is not equality. It is just a different kind of imbalance. Now I want to address the objection that is forming in a significant portion of the audience right now, because I know it is coming. The objection is that what I am describing is just a justification for returning women to traditional roles that were genuinely limiting and genuinely harmful. That the independence women have built over the last several decades came at real cost and represents real progress that should not be casually dismissed. That objection is not wrong. The financial dependence of previous generations of women was genuinely limiting in ways that produced real harm. Women who could not support themselves had no exit from bad marriages. Women who had no professional identity had no source of worth outside of relationships that could be withdrawn. Those were real problems, and the progress away from them was real and important. I am not arguing against any of it. What I am arguing against is something different. The transformation of independence from a practical capacity into a performative identity that women are required to maintain, even when it conflicts directly with what they genuinely want and genuinely need. The insistence that needing a partner is weakness rather than humanity. The cultural pressure that makes it almost impossible for a modern woman to say honestly and without shame that she wants a partnership where she can sometimes be soft, where she can receive care without it threatening her identity, where she can genuinely depend on another person, not because she has no other option, but because she has chosen to. That desire is not regressive, it is human. And the culture that has made it shameful to express is not serving women, it is isolating them. The women who are genuinely thriving in their personal lives are not the ones who have most completely performed independence. They are the ones who have built real capacity for self-sufficiency and then chosen, freely and consciously, to build genuine interdependence with a partner they trust. They bring strength to the relationship rather than arriving from scarcity. But they also bring genuine need, genuine vulnerability, genuine willingness to be known and to depend and to receive. And that combination, strength and openness together, is what produces the kind of partnership that actually sustains both people over the long term. The independence ideology in its current form does not produce that combination. It produces women who are strong on the outside and hollow on the inside, who have everything the culture promised them and cannot understand why it does not feel like enough, who are bringing their unexamined misery into homes and relationships and children's lives without any framework for connecting the ideology they are living by to the suffering it is generating. That connection is what this conversation is trying to make visible, not to diminish what women have built, but to ask honestly whether the framework they have been given for understanding what to do with what they have built is actually serving them, or whether it is asking them to perform a version of strength that is costing them the very things they most deeply want. That is it for today. Let me know in the comments what your honest reaction to this is. Whether this landed in a way that challenged you or confirmed something you already knew, I want to hear your perspective. If you made it this far, go ahead and subscribe, because there is a lot more of this coming. My name is Miss Anna, and I will see you in the next one.